What's up?
Hey there, America.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Motor Zone. My name is Tiffany Clark, and I'm your host and life coach. And we have my wonderful co-host. He's back in the building.
I'm back again, America.
Kevin Lassiter.
Hey there. As you can see, I'm mad excited to be back here.
He's mad excited, y'all.
Very. That's how we say it in Maryland.
That's how you say it in Maryland?
That's how we do in Maryland.
In Maryland. I am very happy to have you back.
Thank you.
However, in your absence,
Yes.
we did have a great episode.
I saw.
We had a guest here by the
Yes.
name of Jatia Jones,
Yes.
a.k.a. the Natural Networker, a.k.a. mother of 14s, the nonprofit organization.
AKA one of my new inspirations. Her work is incredible.
Yes. We definitely had a great conversation.
Yes.
So last week we talked about basically the different... well, actually, it was International Youth Day that we kind of went over, right? And so International Youth Day was focused on transforming education. And so we spoke about that. And 14s, Jatia was telling us how 14s basically is kind of grounded around these 4 pillars.
Yes.
And how she instructs students on things that are not widely covered in schools.
Yeah.
Which are, financial stability, community, social, and the last one escapes me.
I did my research. I did my research on Miss Jones. I had a pleasure meeting and working with her at the African American Festival in Baltimore. And I had a joy watching the episode while away for work. And what I found most admirable is putting teens in the position to meet people, CEOs, people in government, people in law,
Yes.
exposing them to
Yes.
new career fields. I
Yes.
often tell people this. I don't mean to. I'm sorry. I don't
No,
mean to
go
take
for
over.
it.
I just get excited. I often tell people this. If Mount St. Joseph, my school, go Gales, wonderful school. If there had been someone from the military to introduce me to other possibilities, I thought I was going to go into law school after high school.
Yes.
And just law wasn't my forte. I ended
Yes.
up doing policy. But if I
Yes.
had someone from the military come in, teach me, show me that you can join.
You have other options.
I have other options. I can go to the academy, graduate as an officer, go into the intel world, and just, or go into policy or whatever. That would have been a much smoother transition, a much inexpensive transition for me.
Right.
I was blessed by the grace of God. My mother was able to afford university for me undergrad, and then I kept on going. And my 20s was a little rough trying to figure everything out, but I made it.
Right.
But I think the transition would have been a lot smoother if I would have been introduced to some more options
Right.
that were affordable. But imagine teens who don't have parents or families to show them, or to help them financially, and then they don't have exposure to other people, other organizations who could bring them into new career fields like the military or like law or business. They don't know. It's missing, and they don't have guidance. And for teens, allows them to be guided.
Yes.
Have a mentor.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of 14s, she's having her 2nd annual Teen Summit this weekend.
In Georgia.
It's in Atlanta, Georgia.
Shout out Hotlanta.
24 August. I always say the number first sounds very military. On August 24th, you guys.
Yes.
There will be a 2nd annual Teen Summit going on in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you go on to 4teens.org, that's FORTEEENS.org, you will be able to purchase your tickets to the 2nd annual Teen Summit. I'm so proud of her. And I'm sure that great things are going to come out of it. It is a great event for adults and children alike. Teens, the tweens.
The tweens. I'm speaking promise into their lives right now.
Yes.
I don't mean to get spiritual, but I'm speaking promise into their lives.
Speak it.
Yes.
Speaking the promise.
Exactly. You're all going to make it. You guys, please head down to Atlanta. You're going to enjoy yourself. You'll be able to network. You'll be able to touch amazing lives.
Yes.
And actually...
And gain something. There's a lot of great guest speakers that are going to be in there and teaching you a bunch of things. And
you'll be surprised. I was just going to say that. You'll be surprised. You're going sometimes you walk into an experience thinking that you're going to touch and make a difference when something or someone really touches you in the process.
Yes. And for the adults, you never know. It might inspire you to become somebody that can maybe speak at the next 14s.
Exactly.
I'm sure that there are a lot of people out here that have great. They're in great professions. They have a lot of experience, and so it would be great to be able to bring something next year.
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Maybe you and I can walk up in there.
Oh, we walking up in there next year. yes, we walking up in there next year. The Motive Zone will be in the building.
In the building representing.
For next year's, the third annual Teen Summit. Unfortunately, we couldn't be there this year, but that's all right. That's all right.
We're
are there
promoting
in spirit. We're promoting, and we're there in spirit.
Yes.
We will be there in spirit, lifting y'all up.
Yes.
So enjoy.
Yes.
So yes, we were talking about transforming education and what that looks like, and basically, I think one of the issues, not issues, but one of the topics that came up was ethical leadership. We need ethical leadership in order to teach our teens something different, show them a different way.
Yeah.
Like, for example, even with as far as like the language that we use as we try to encourage and keep our teens out of trouble, sometimes, especially in the Black community, we use fear-based language.
Yeah. Mama and her words.
Yes. If you don't, and it's fear-based language that is like an either-or conversation, or like if you don't do X, Y, Z, I'ma.
Right, exactly.
Beat your ass.
Right.
And so
it was effective, but
it was. I don't know how effective it was. It was all right. I was a scary teen, but you have people that rebel against that.
Yeah, definitely.
And they run to the streets because they don't feel heard or feel supported or encouraged.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to have a balance, so my mother really did use those words. She scared me straight, but I had my scared straight. But I had my grandmother right there to offer a balance to that. And I can understand where you're coming from. A lot of teens don't have that, and you can easily rebel. When it came down to my relationship with my parents, my mom did use those words, and it was really hard for me to come to her and ask her a specific question. So I ended up doing my own research. That was just my personality in high school. But again, touched by the grace of God, imagine if my grandmother or my high school wasn't there, I would be out in the streets too, seeking comfort because I couldn't find it at home.
That's right. And like for me, how was I? I think that I was a very meek and shy, timid kid. Yeah, I really was. And so when it came down to speaking to my grandmother was the fear-based language lady. God bless her. It was a tough love kind of situation. However, so I rebelled kind of.
As most teens do.
Stayed around my friends a little bit longer than what I should have. But luckily I didn't get involved in anything nefarious. I kind of just focused on just doing the right thing for the most part. So I guess it did work. Yeah,
you know what? All teens are going to rebel. That's the rebellious age. You're teenagers. You're going to rebel. But going back to what you talked about, having guidance and having someone who can spiritually implant goodness and guide you to a good position in life, to where you need to be. That's what it comes down to. Albeit your grandmother was very hard on you, I imagine that she played a major mentorship role in guiding you along a particular path.
Here's the thing. I think that with parents who do use fear-based language, they're afraid for you.
Yeah.
They're afraid for you. And so they want the best for you.
Right.
And so I can't doubt that she wanted the best for me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
The streets are mean.
Yeah.
And you can get into a lot of different things.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
my aunt one time told me, you're a boy. Your mother isn't going to be soft on you because the world isn't going to be soft on you. I think in her mind, she was preparing me for what the world may not say directly, but would
especially as a black boy,
but how they would treat me, so that I'm not caught off by surprise and have rose-colored glasses on, but expect this world is going to be hard, it's going to be tough. So if I can handle it at home, I can handle it abroad. But again, when you're molding the mind of a child and a teenager, you have to have some moments of love and softness because they are yours.
And they're very impressionable. They're very intuitive. And, and the reason why we had brought this conversation up is because remember at Afram,
Yeah.
you were there, and
Yeah.
the young boy, he was like filled with rage. He was trying to fight the other young boy.
Yeah.
And then I guess a mentor of some sort, he came around, he was like, yelling at him, telling him to calm down.
Cursing at him, actually.
Cursing at him
Yeah.
and telling him that if he didn't calm down, he was going to mess him up. And that's why he doesn't take him anywhere and all of this stuff.
And that he was going to end up in jail.
And that's exactly what I was going towards.
Yeah.
It's that either or conversation.
Yeah.
That either you're going to, listen to me, do the right thing, or you're going to end up in jail. And it's detrimental to our young boys in particular, our young black boys, because we already have that looming over, our heads, you know?
So in fact, if you remember, he actually left the boy. He told the other kids, come on, let him stay there and just be quiet, and we're going to move on.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I'm sorry. So remember when I said at the Teen Summit, or when we mentioned the Teen Summit, I said that I speak. What did I say? I speak life, or I was speaking, because the very words that you say I'm a spiritualist among many other things, and the words that you say when you speak with your mouth, your tongue has power. It can either give life or it can destroy. When you speak destruction can come. When you speak life can come.
Absolutely.
So instead of telling your kids you're going to wind up in jail or you're going to jail, say, hey, you got to straighten up and fly right, young man. This isn't, let me tell you something about the streets. When you get out here and you do that behavior, there's some circumstances that are going to arise. And here are some things that you may encounter. You got to straighten up and fly right, because I believe in you. I know that you can do better, and you're going to do better.
That's
and
right.
As an incentive, I'm going to take away your PlayStation until, you prove me otherwise, because in the real world, when you do well, consequences, good things happen. If you act silly, consequences, bad things happen. And right now, the bad thing is I'm taking away your toy or something like that. I'm gonna be a
First
tough
of all,
dad.
can we just all agree that we love authoritarian Kevin? Wasn't that great? I thought that was great. I was like, you better tell the young people. Sorry, there's a fly. You better tell the young people, Kevin.
Yes.
But
Sometimes you got to be tough.
You got to be tough. But here's the thing. I'm not throwing shade at the man that, kind of went on the young boy, because he was tripping. The little boy, he was tripping. He would not back down.
I got up and was going to, hey,
calm
listen,
down,
young man. Let me speak to you for a second.
It's so funny because I locked eyes with the little boy because I was getting ready to tell him, bring yourself over here. Come talk to me for a minute. But then he stormed off and kind of walked away. But here's the thing. We react to our children in the ways that we were taught a lot of the times. However, children, it was clear that he was not his kid.
Right.
He had a group of children with him, and I can only imagine how frustrating or stressful that was to kind of look at.
Great minds think alike, because I was thinking that was a frustrating sort of thing.
Yeah, it was a frustrating thing. You couldn't get him to calm down. You have control over a bunch of teens.
Yeah.
And so, you're trying to keep them all safe. And I could only imagine how frustrating that was for him. And I think that he spoke to him in a way that the kid could understand. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
However, this is a child that you don't know what his home life situation, or we don't, but I'm just saying, you may not know what his home life situation is. Maybe he's getting a lot of that at home. Maybe he's in a situation where he feels like he has to show that he's not a punk at home.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's, feeling punked at home and instead of, defending himself or, and he's unable to defend himself at home, he's out in the streets or, in school rebelling and acting out.
Psychologists do say that sometimes kids act out when they're not getting what they need at home. And it can be in a number of ways. I don't mean to compare children to animals, but when a dog or a cat is very anxious, they'll scratch up and tear up everything. And it's not because they're evil little creatures, it's because they're experiencing some sense of anxiety. The same with children. When we're in the younger stages of human life, we're at our most primitive. And so when we're not getting what we need at home, or if we're getting abused at home and we don't have the power to latch out, we at times take that power and we latch out and we tear up.
Right. And so what I think is important is that we learn how to use positive reinforcement for children. And also we allow them to learn how to be trusted.
Right.
We allow them the opportunity to show that we can trust them and that,
Or space to talk.
or space to talk,
Yeah.
that their voices actually matter, because this
Yeah.
kid was obviously filled with a lot of anger.
You don't know
He
where it was from.
And we don't know where it was from. So having, letting him kind of go off and then saying, okay, where is this coming from, was probably the best solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of animals, I think I've said this before. I always watch like those little dodo videos.
Yeah.
And like how they always show like humans, people throughout the world always going out and rescuing animals.
Yeah. Yes.
And sometimes I feel like people place so much support behind rescuing animals, and which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because animals, they, particularly dogs, people love dogs. I love dogs myself. I've had dogs. And
We're responsible for the life on this earth.
we are responsible that's so good of you to say. I love my Kevin, you guys. I do. Okay, so yes, I do. I notice that people definitely take responsibility for a lot of the the animals that are being left and abused and neglected. And it just made me feel as though people are more inclined to do that with animals than they are with people.
Which leads us to the topic, where's the love?
Right. Where is the love?
Love for humanity.
Where's the love for humanity?
Yeah.
So if you guys follow the Motive Zone, we posted about World Humanitarian, which was World Humanitarian Day, which was on Monday. And just to give you a little background history, World Humanitarian Day was adopted by the UN General Council. General Council? No, General Assembly.
General Assembly, yes.
As an international day that's dedicated to humanitarians who have lost their lives working for humanitarian causes. And in particular, it is dedicated to he was the representative of the Secretary General to Iraq, Sergio Vieira de Mello, and 21 of his colleagues who were killed in the bombing at the UN headquarters in Baghdad in, I don't remember which year, but it's dedicated to those individuals. And why we decided to talk about World Humanitarian Day is because actually World Humanitarian Day was dedicated to women humanitarians.
Yes.
Yes.
This
year it was
yes.
dedicated to women humanitarians.
It was.
And so I just found that quite delightful.
Powerful.
Powerful
Yes.
as a woman and
Yes.
as a humanitarian, because I love serving the people.
Right.
But World Humanitarian Day, and so it kind of made me think about all of the ways that people are give, show service, provide service to people. And then also it made me think about the flip side.
Right.
Like I said, I feel like sometimes people are more dedicated to caring for animals than they are for human beings. And in particular, the homeless. We have a huge homeless population.
We do.
In this region.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we discovered that in Baltimore in particular.
So 1/3. So out of the national homeless population, where Baltimore City is 1/3 of that population.
That's crazy.
That is insane. And I wanted to emphasize, I told my co-host this, I wanted to emphasize to you, America, because of our proximity to Washington, D.C., when it comes to government positions in private industry, Maryland is noted as one of the wealthiest and most expensive states in the union. But we experience one of the highest rates of homelessness in a major city like Baltimore.
Yeah. When I was growing up, those Feed the Children commercials?
Yeah, they were always international.
They were always international.
On the African continent.
I have two things to say about that. Number one, and I always get made fun of because I am a huge sap. I have a huge, huge heart. But seeing those commercials, I used to cry.
Oh, yeah.
I used to cry. I'm
Yeah.
so serious. It used to make me cry so hard.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, why are these children starving? How is this happening in our world? I just felt like I wanted to heal the world.
I felt scared because the reason why I said most of them were always on the African continent and always in the village, in the remote areas.
Yeah.
because the people they were displaying looked like me.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing that happened when I started to learn about the transatlantic slave trade. The images and the people look like me.
Right.
So I have the type of mind where I come from a Jesuit background, and the Jesuits always taught to put yourself in the story. So it's kind of easy for me. It's by nature that I put myself in those stories, especially when the people look like me, especially
Right.
when they come from similar ethnicities. And from a young age, growing up near Baltimore, I grew up in Baltimore County, but my church and family members were always in the city. I would come across homelessness. So I knew at a young age that what was going on over there was happening over here. And the main thought that hit my mind was is my family going to suffer from that because I look like them? What's stopping us from going into that predicament? And with the person with OCD, I didn't know I had it back then, but it always replayed in my mind what would happen if that was me. And it was just so easy for me to see. So I didn't cry, I was just afraid. And I would just hurry up and turn those commercials off.
I just find it, what's interesting is that homelessness can happen so easily. I've had homelessness in my family.
Yeah.
And like I have people in my family who were homeless. And just thinking about how easy it is for these things to occur. You lose your job.
You can.
First of all, particularly in the Black communities, we are like on the brink of homelessness every day.
Yeah.
A lot of us are. And because of the socioeconomic divide.
Let me give you, according to St. Vincent de Paul in Baltimore, and for those of you who are outside of the Baltimore area, don't know, we have a very Catholic history. So it's a Catholic organization started during the Civil War, and its first parish meeting was actually in 1865 in the nation's first basilica in downtown Baltimore.
Let me tell y'all, Kevin will give y'all some history and some facts. Okay?
Yes. So we all know. Well, I just want you to understand the basis of where they come
I love
from.
it. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, in the effects of the Civil War, there was this was during the time of the antebellum period. So there were slavery. We never talk about slavery in Baltimore, but slavery was happening in Central Maryland. In Baltimore, and because of the Civil War, a lot of people were displaced out of their homes in the city, and then of course you had the issues of those who were suffering under the oppression of slavery.
Right.
So the organization was started in response to humanitarian issues that the city was facing at the time, offering their best solution. So according to them, reasons for homelessness, as you stated, losing your job, but a lot of what the cases that they see, mental disability, and that can be connected to drug and alcohol addiction, as well as the inability to work. And what does that mean? Physical disability, as well as if someone is, recently let out of jail, first, second offenders, recently let out of jail, it's a difficult time in their lives for them to find work because not many people are apt to hire offenders of the law.
And you know what else? And to add to that, young adults being released from foster care.
Yeah.
Being released out of the foster care system, because I know that, if you do not have someplace to go, once you hit 21, it's just kind of like
you're on your own.
You're on your own to figure it out.
Right. With no guidance, no leadership.
Not always. A lot of times there are resources available, but, the people who are in charge of your case are not providing you with those resources. They're not providing you with those details, with support after you age out, because they figure, well, you're 21, you'll figure it out.
I'm glad that you said that. According to, and from 2016 to 2017, the U.S. Department of Education received data that throughout that school year, 2016 to 2017, 16,627 public school students experienced homelessness. And out of that, 267 students were unsheltered, 1,641 were in shelters, 1,549 were living in motels and hotels. Out of that population, California, Texas, Florida, Washington State, Oregon, New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania had experienced heightened and still do homelessness of youth. They are reaching over 13,500. So that includes ages 18 to 24. And this is according to the U.S. Department of Education. According to Continuum of Care, that's an organization that works with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And as of January 2018, 7,144 people reported homelessness. 267 of those were accompanied by young adults, 18 to 24. A lot of those young adults, when they say family, they don't mean mom and dad in their cases. They mean brother, sister, cousin, or friend that became a family member. And from what they've seen, out of 18 to 24, either they had difficulty of job placement or they've been kicked out of their homes, being LGBT youth, not able to find guardians or job placement.
I appreciate the fact that you specifically mentioned LGBT youth. So let's talk about that a little bit more. So why is that? Why is there such a huge population of homeless youth that are LGBT?
Well, the situation is more social than it is anything else. What tends to happen, a lot of parents, a lot of families are not able to handle a coming out situation for their youth. And so they create a hostile environment. They're either kicked out or they leave trying to find a better home. There's particular stories that I've heard. I'm not going to mention their names for privacy issue. I was a college student at Loyola University, part of Spectrum, which was an LGBT organization, and it was used to give assistance to college students at Loyola who are LGBT. But there have been a lot of stories of people who were either kicked out or left home, especially in California, amongst Hispanic and Native American families, because the families didn't understand who they were. And a lot of these young people didn't have people to go to. Some of them, like a fraction, I would say 1% did. They had their boyfriends and their girlfriends who had families, aunts, uncles who could house them. Most of them did not. And what ends up happening, they're out on the streets. A lot of them, because they grew up in homes, don't know the resources that they have to give them assistance. And so they just end up on the streets. And really, and states like Maryland, California, and conservative states like Louisiana and Texas, the issue is completely ignored. About the LGBT homeless issue is ignored because of how it's treated socially. It's still considered a stigma. It's still considered taboo to be a member of that community. And so because the issue is ignored, a lot of resources aren't taught in schools, a lot of conversations aren't had in families, so the children or the young people end up living out in the streets, trying to figure out life. So what really needs to happen is just re-education. And you mostly see this amongst families of color.
I think that that's kind of like, I guess we're kind of doing a part 2 of last week's conversation, because it's about transforming education.
Yeah, not to cut you off, but toxic masculinity. I know I do follow people like Candace Owens, who represent a strong conservative voice in the Black community, and I understand what they mean.
What is toxic masculinity?
Toxic masculinity is when you put, I can give a great example, when you put manship, or when you define masculinity and by defining it by Western standards. For example, someone like Jaden Smith, who experiments with fashion and mix both female and male. Toxic masculinity would say that he's poisoned, would say that he's confused, would say that he needs a baptism so that he can turn into a man, because a man, according to Western standards, is supposed to dress like this, speak like this, act like this. And when you don't speak and look and act, you become a pariah in your particular community, ostracized. This adds to the suicide rates. This adds to the homeless rates, because you don't fit in and the family don't know where to put you in, so they kick you out. Society doesn't know where to fit you in, so they don't talk about you. It's hidden. It affects cisgender, which are women who were born women, or when you're born and you're a particular sex, you're cisgender. When you're not born and your sex, you're transgender. And we can get into that conversation for another show.
Right.
But cisgendered women, this affects them too because you're put in a particular picture. This is how a woman is supposed to act. This is how a man is supposed to act. You can't step over the line. If you step over the line, what are you trying to do? You're affecting or you're destroying the family. And a lot of people will look at the black family and would say that this new heightened feminism is destructive to the black family because roles are now taken out. The children are confused. The man isn't in the home, and the woman is taking on multiple roles.
So I want to go back to that toxic masculinity, and and the cisgender conversation as well. But for me, just like talking about the young boy who was getting into a fight last week. And one of the things that the gentleman who, I guess he was like a mentor, kept saying to him is like, you're not about that life.
Right.
You're not about that life.
Right.
What is that life?
Right.
What is that life? What it's saying is, what it's doing is subconsciously glorifying thug mentality, like thug culture, thug mentality.
Yeah.
What it's saying is that what he's trying to tell him is that, no, what he is telling him is that he's not tough.
Right.
Okay.
And
and what he is telling him is that he's not about that life. And so what that can do is subconsciously create an act of defiance. He wants to, now you done bruised my ego. You telling me that I'm not tough, so now I have to go out there and prove that I'm tough. And if you are a young gay male and you are basically being told like you're not tough, you're
on the defensive side all the time.
You're on the defensive side, and you may hide the fact that you're gay.
Yeah, which can be mentally exhausting. Yeah, and it can be devastating to your mental health. So going back to toxic masculinity to that example, the young man at home could be given the picture in Black America, and Black America in particularly, and I'm not going to use facts and figures for this. I'm just going to speak from experience.
My experience, right?
Because I am a Black man, so I should be able to speak from my own experience. Black America has this idea of what a Black man should be, but they take this idea from that particular stereotype. They say that, a Black man is supposed to be tough. They're supposed to speak like this, act like this. When you don't speak and act like this, then you're looked upon as something's wrong with you.
Right.
So growing up as a young child, going back to that example of that young boy, he may be constantly bombarded with images either from family or friends or television that this is how a Black man is. And just how young girls look at magazines and want to desire the bodies that they see in those magazines and can't achieve it. When you're constantly bombarding young men with particular images of what a man should be, and they don't fit that particular description, it hurts the ego, it hurts the mind, and it's like I'm a male, but I can't live up to that because that's not who I am. And so they try to tap in as hard as they can to fit into a particular stereotype. So now you have him, fighting that, and then when some guy, his mentor, literally tells him that in front of his face, after getting into a fist fight with a friend, it causes for an explosion because now he's boiling at the top. I'm so sick and tired of people telling me that,
I'm not about that life. I'm not tough. I can't prove myself.
Right. I'm going to prove myself today. I'm going to prove myself to both of you. And that's what happens. That's what happens. But then when you meet someone who may or may not be gay, but who may harbor what Western society considers feminine characteristics, it can be devastating to their self-worth, self-esteem, because they can't live up to what society says that they need to be. Instead of society saying a man is someone who loves, a man is someone who can take care of himself through a job and does what he can to earn honest money to provide for himself and for his family. A man is present. You add on these particular stereotypes that young men try to live up to, and some of them can't. Most of them can't.
And not only does that happen with males, but it happens with females. I know, or just people in general. I feel like when you are constantly trying to, when you put someone down for not living up to what society says that you should be, not only can people lash out, but they can internalize and just feel as if, allow people to be like they become like the punching bag.
Right.
They become like the people pleaser.
Right.
They become like the person that everybody kind of walks on and doesn't respect or whatever. And that, I know that is something that as an individual you have to work on and kind of build yourself up against. But when you have been kind of taught that, you've been conditioned to believe that you are not worthy, that you are not good enough, that you are not you are not lovable.
Right.
Then you internalize that stuff.
How does a phoenix know it's a phoenix when it's told its whole entire life that it's a chicken? I know that sounds weird.
No, it doesn't sound weird, because I know that for my own with my own childhood, that was kind of the things that I faced. Being told that I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't tough. I wasn't really into fighting. I was
or a woman enough,
or cool enough, because I'm from New York and I didn't have that
swag,
that thing that New Yorkers have. I didn't care about appearances. I was a nerd. I was kind of quiet. I was timid, like I said earlier. And what I did was, over time, I grew into a people pleaser. And it was a negative thing initially, because I wanted to prove like I'm likable. I want you to like me because, whatever. I'm kind. I'm, whatever.
Human beings by nature are social creatures.
Right.
That's why we form families. That's why we form nation states. I mean, Hobbes and Hobbes spoke about this when he spoke about the importance of government and the role that government plays. We always have been a community, and government played like some sort of role to containing individuals within that community. You don't steal from me because the law says that you can't. And by nature, we're more apt to fight for ourselves. But government formed because we're also by nature, it's the dual nature. We're also communal, and we have to have some laws and standards to protect each other and to protect the community. And so when you're ousted, when you're an outcast, it's I know some people may experience, some people are introverts, but at the same time, they need family, they need love. And when you're not given that, you try to
get it from somewhere else.
Get it from somewhere else, no matter where, however where. That's why a lot of people make mistakes when it comes to sexuality.
Right.
You jump from person to person,
because you're looking for somebody to love you.
Exactly.
But, and going back to, what I was saying earlier about, becoming a people pleaser, I feel like that's why we need to change the conversation that we have with children.
Yeah.
It's not, because what happens is, instead of telling a child what they are not, you need to tell a child what they are.
Right.
For me personally, it's an interesting story, but my father's been in my life my whole life. I didn't hear from this man that I was beautiful until I was like 30 years old.
Wow.
I don't recall ever hearing him say, "Tiffany, you are beautiful."
Yeah. Well, you are.
I mean, thank you. But could you imagine?
Yeah.
You've gone 30 years without ever hearing that from the head.
Right.
The head of who, your first love, the
Your
first
household.
person that the head of your household, but also your first love, your first superhero. You don't hear that your whole life. You grow up going through a bunch of changes, seeking that.
Right.
Seeking that from other men or women or friendships or
Yeah.
work situations.
Yeah.
And you kind of go through a revolving door of trying to figure out how to love yourself, because it wasn't instilled in you to love yourself from the beginning.
That's actually been my experience. So from the male perspective, not being man enough, not fitting into a particular stereotype, because I harbored what society called both feminine and masculine ways, and then at the same time I was a nerd, so I really didn't fit the picture of a black man from Baltimore. And so because of that, I was picked on a lot. I was different, and I never really heard from my household, "Hey, you're pretty cool," or "Hey, you're handsome," or "Hey, you're smart, you're brilliant." It was just always, I had to put on a face. Even in the church, when I was delivering speeches, you know how they used to do in churches when you read the scripture or presented speeches at Christmas time or Easter. I had to be absolutely perfect because it just made the family look good.
Right.
As opposed to being told, hey, you're great the way that you are. Let's practice. You put your best foot forward. And because of that, I became a people pleaser and I looked for love from different men and sometimes women too, but not in the same way from men. Because I didn't grow up with my dad in my life. I became reacquainted with him at undergrad.
Yeah, as I mentioned in previous episodes, I did grow up in foster care, but my father has never, like, I've always known him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I get it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, even though I just feel like, particularly when you have families that are broken.
Yeah.
If you are in a child's life as a mentor, as a teacher, as a family friend, I think that it's very important that we instill in children confidence.
Yeah.
And lovability.
Yeah.
And trust.
And self-worth.
And because that basically, creates self-worth. And so how do we change that? And the reason why I keep bringing up children and foster care is because right now we are facing a huge humanitarian crisis at the border with these children.
Yeah.
And it's becoming, and I know that we see this in the media all the time. We've been seeing it in the media. We've been told lies. We've been told truth. We've seen the horror pictures. We've been hearing the horror stories. We know that these children are out there. They're being separated from their parents. But see, what people don't understand why this is important for the United States as a whole is because not only does it affect border relations, and it's definitely inhumane what these people are experiencing, but also it can become a humanitarian issue for the foster care system. You have unaccompanied children. We don't know where their parents are. We may not know. What's going to happen over time? Like we may end up having a situation like how they had with Haiti in 2010, where children were being airlifted away from their parents and away from their homes, and then put into the pool of adoption.
Yeah. Some of them never finding homes.
Some of them never finding home, or ended up in foster care for long periods of time. You got parents who are detained. What are you going to do with these children? They have to go somewhere.
Right. And for those, do you mind if I speak on the border crisis for those who are confused of what's happening? Because
please do.
Yeah. I'm just going to spend a few minutes for the sake of time, but also because people
don't really understand.
People don't really understand what's happening.
What's happening here? Yeah.
So this is different than the Bush and Clinton administration. A lot of people are basing the immigration crisis or the migration crisis in the southern border off of a different population. This isn't a population similar to what we experienced in the 90s and early 2000s. In the early 90s and in the 90s and early 2000s, what you have seen, according to Homeland Security, are migrant males coming in from Mexico for different reasons, either looking for job opportunities, and they were hopping over the border with no concern of documentation, hopping over for job placement, or some were criminals, hopping over for drug trade with cartels and the southern states of Texas, southwest states of Texas, and then California. Okay. That was happening. So, and then when you tie into post 9/11, United States racist security apparatus for those particular means, we wanted to control and contain who came in, as well as via the border, via the sea, through the Caribbean or through the Gulf, and via plane. So that's that particular population, mostly males from Mexico, seeking either employment opportunities, not caring about the legal situation or legal care or how to do
repercussions,
that.
Right?
Repercussions, or they were criminals connected with cartels. But in today's migration, you're experiencing something different. Right. You're experiencing whole families who are migrating.
Separated. Come on.
Yeah, whole families migrating from the Northern Triangle region, which includes El Salvador, running from. So let me give you a hold on, America. You know I got to give you my facts. So Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, the Northern Triangle region. I want people to understand that. And they're running from gun violence, they're running from gang violence, they're running from cartels who have completely taken over their government. And what tends to happen, the cartels hook politicians, military personnel, as well as police officers. So there's no Guatemala, Honduras, and now Venezuela, and Guatemala, Honduras, in El Salvador, their security apparatus is now shattered because a lot of the people who are running security are linked to the cartels.
Wow.
So they're running practically for their lives. They're running and under US law and international law, when migrants run seeking shelter for religious, ethnic, or political persecution, which you can actually tie into what's happening in the Northern Triangle. When they come on U.S. soil, they're given the right to a fair trial.
Yes.
And they're not supposed to be detained for long periods of time, but their case is supposed to be reviewed in front of an immigration judge to see what they are running from, who they're running from, what their backstory is, what's happening in their particular region. And because we have so much information coming in from Central America, we know what's going on.
Right.
We have ties to what's going on.
Right.
We have ties to particular region and cartels running those regions. So it's quite easy for us to process an individual. I say it's still challenging because there's so many people coming into our borders, but it's quite easy for us to process them, to understand their story in a fair trial.
Now, let's talk about...
So that's the background.
So, thank you, Kevin. That was fantastic.
Yes. All from U.S. Homeland Security.
Right.
Yeah.
My man Kevin has the facts, like
Yes.
I said. But so, like I said earlier, not only is this a humanitarian issue, this is also an issue for our foster care system, but this is also an issue for homelessness. You know, because think about it. You have nowhere to go. You have no way to earn an income. You have no way to feed your children. Where are you going to go?
This is why some people, especially on the left, are saying that this is a humanitarian issue, because you're talking about long detentions and what is described as insanitary holdings. Children are in holdings.
Right.
Children are separated from their parents because their parents are under scrutiny, and the government is trying to figure out, do we send them back or do we keep them? What is their backstory? But what ends up happening is that a lot of those children who have made it across the border, when discovered by ICE, a lot of them are separated, detained, and some of them do end up in the foster care system, especially if they are born here. Something happens because under the 13th and 14th Amendment, you're free and you're a citizen if you're born on U.S. soil. If the parents are not and the children are, sometimes the children are separated. The parents go back to immigration. The children are left in the hands of the system if there's no relative who is a U.S. citizen that can take them in, or no guardian.
Right.
So what tends to happen, they end up in the system. So I'm trying to picture, because I know we have conservative viewers, and I'm trying to bring in the other side of the story, of the humanitarian story, but it's very difficult for me to do.
I think the other side of the humanitarian story is that we need to secure our borders. We don't need to allow people into this country like that, and blah, blah, blah.
And it's challenging because of the lack of resources that we have.
It's challenging for the lack of resources that we have, but if you have it written into law...
Yeah, it's international in U.S. law.
That people can come here to seek asylum.
Yeah.
Then the conversation needs to change.
Yeah.
How do we transform the education about what's going on in these countries? Like, something needs to be done about stabilizing
that region,
the triangle, so that we don't have this influx of people coming into our country, and we don't have this these children being separated from their families, and we don't have this increase in, because not everyone is detained.
Right.
Not everyone is getting detained. So you have, I mean, and I don't know if there has been an increase in homelessness, but I'm saying that over time that this can happen.
Right. Now, I will say this. I am for border security. simply because I'm coming from.
I think we're all for border security.
Right.
Like we all want safe borders. We don't
safe
just,
borders, especially coming from post 9/11 generation.
Correct, but
I want the people firmly vetted.
But here's the thing, and I'm sorry to interrupt your
Of course,
thought because, but a lot of the people that are particular threats to our company, they come here on visas.
Yeah.
Okay, they come here, they fly here. It's not the borders that are the issue.
Right.
Okay, the issue is that we have people coming into this country. They stay here and are able to do things to our country, threaten our national security.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So why are we scapegoating? The people of Mexico, Honduras, and
Guatemala. The Northern Triangle.
The Northern Triangle.
I think what, and that's why I wanted to give a little skiff of the background.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are thinking, pre 9/11, 2000, the 1990s, that people are coming in from Mexico, that they're flooding the borders from Mexico, and these are migrant workers, and these are workers that are connected, that are all men connected to either they just want a free pass without going through the legal process of finding job security in the United States, or they are connected with drugs. I don't think people realize what's the real issue that's happening in Central America. And policy, we call that long-term solution. What is long-term solution to this issue? Finding out how we can dethrone the cartels and put in secure governments in Central American countries. That's the long-term solution.
Yeah, that's the long-term solution. But the short-term solution is how about we, we have a lot of addicted people here in this country. Mm-hmm. So they want the drugs that are coming across the border. Or, how am I trying to say this? I'm trying to say that we need to fix the drug crisis here. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure the opioid crisis is huge here. We need to ensure that people are getting help instead of being criminalized for their addictions. Mm-hmm. We need to figure out a way to combat this homelessness. Mm-hmm. We need to really offer loving solutions that start from the ground up.
So what I'm thinking, and then I'll say a little bit concerning border control, and then because I have a solution for the homeless problem too.
Okay.
And from my research and policy.
I like this.
But so you guys know I'm a Republican, so I listen in on both sides.
I like that. I've never heard that. Republican.
I'm a Republican. So what I'm gathering, we tried to deal. So again, going back to the 90s, a lot of people said that building the wall isn't a good solution because people can tunnel or people can fly over. What we need to do is some of the money that we fund the DoD, Department of Defense, need to fund Homeland Security for both drone to patrol the wall above and to patrol the wall below, so that we can see who's coming in. But in the same time, have a more humanitarian practice of people, of migrants who are seeking asylum. Open up, put agents at the border, open the doors at a certain hour, and allow people, because most of them are coming in as families, allow people to come in. And according to Homeland Security, a lot of these people come in and wait to be detained by Border Patrol because they're looking for assistance. They want to tell their story. They're looking for assistance. They don't know where to go, and they would rather be detained than shot up in Central America. So they're looking for somewhere, and they don't
without being deported.
So put agents on the ground who actually know what's happening in Central America and who can connect with immigration judges and create a humane and stable environment at the wall to detain until we find out who they are, their particular story, and then start the process of asylum. Because by international and U.S. law, that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, because...
And no long-term detention.
I guess that's where the question lies. It's like, where is the love? Where is the love for humanity?
Right.
Why are we treating people worse than we treat animals?
They need to
You can go to jail for abusing an animal.
You can.
But yet and still we have people out here who are homeless. You have children who are starving. You have children who are being just, abused and neglected and put in the foster care system. And granted, the foster care system is not a bad system. We just need to ensure that people are being well vetted before they're being allowed to foster and adopt children,
right?
Because it's like a either or kind of situation. You have these foster parents who are either they're really good foster parents or they're in it for the winning.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I've
They're
heard
in it for the
horror
money.
stories.
So anyway,
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring up. It's just the wall is such an important
no,
part of the conversation
don't apologize.
concerning
It was a good conversation.
migration. Yeah.
No, it's a good conversation. But I agree with you. I think that we definitely need to figure out ways to offer love to our
brothers and sisters coming from the South,
or just in general, you know, because we have a huge homeless crisis here in DC and in Baltimore, like you said. And I know how it is, you know, because there's a stigma around people who are addicted or they have mental health issues. We kind of shun away from that.
But we need to educate ourselves.
We need to educate ourselves, and we need to tear down our walls.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse over time if we do not take action and offer some kind of humanitarian assistance, even in a small way.
Yeah.
I mean, make sandwiches. Go to the store, get you some what do you call that? Not chopped meat, but you know. Some sandwich meat.
Yeah.
I don't eat meat anymore, you guys. So I don't know where to go.
Oh,
I'm like, what is
vegan,
that? Make some cheese and cucumber sandwiches and give it to the people on the street. You know what I'm saying? Or just become more involved in some of the organizations that we have in the community, because I know like there are missions in the area. There are homeless shelters that really need support, and they really need. I mean, it really doesn't have to take up a whole lot of time, for, you know, in your day.
Right. I would suggest that Baltimore has a huge vacant house population. I don't mean to say
my gosh, yes.
Vacant houses.
I love, I mean, I have a certain place in my heart for Baltimore.
I do too, but you got to call it how you see it.
Yeah, there's so many.
So I would love to see a future mayor. I would love to see a future mayor who would use city money to rebuild some of those houses and make them into shelters.
That's a great idea
for people
Kevin.
who have mental illness, because that's one of the main reasons that people are out is because
for youth shelters and for housing for children coming out of foster care.
Yeah, and do a job placement program for a lot of those people, especially the young people. A lot of those people. We need cybersecurity agents. We need people who are engineers who's going to build up.
We need people who are willing to pick up the trash, you know, or work on sewers, or work on HVACs and work on air conditioners, and you know, like that kind of just regular work on cars.
Yeah.
Like, we need just regular, you know, blue collar workers who are, you know, because a lot of those things require extensive schooling.
Right.
You know, cybersecurity. I mean, granted, you can get certs, but those things are expensive.
Yeah.
We need programs in place where you can get those certs for free.
Yeah. Because I just want to see my people push and make it further than where they are. We need, and instead of just walking around, for some of the young people,
we walk around with blinders on.
Right. For some of the young people on the streets, and for some who have made mistakes or were wrongly accused and coming out of jail, we need efficient job placement programs for them.
Yeah. And the recidivist rate is so high.
Yeah.
That's
what tends to happen.
That because we don't have resources available.
And they go back out in the street.
Right. So, you know, just like how we were talking about it last week, we were talking about 14s is a really great organization. CASA is a really great organization to get involved in. Thread is a really great organization out in Baltimore. Also have Destined for Greatness that are all doing really great things within the region that offer support to young people, because I feel like we need to really work with our young people.
Yeah,
you know,
they're the next generation.
Yeah, they are the next generation, and one day we're going to be the elders, and we're going to need these young people to take care of us.
Right.
Okay. So. We kind of touched on a lot of topics today. We had humanitarianism in our hearts today.
We did. So, and that is a broad topic that touches a lot of populations in this country.
It is.
Yeah.
But thank you for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Motive Zone. We're also on YouTube The Motive Zone.
Yes.
You can find us on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify.
Yes.
We're also on Buzzsprout.
That one.
We're on Buzzsprout.
That one.
We're on everything. So make sure you tune in, subscribe, leave us a comment. If you like it, share it, all that good stuff. And make sure you look into some of these organizations that we bring up during our episodes, because like we were talking about earlier, and in earlier episodes, we try to bridge the gap between communities and really raise awareness about what's going on in our communities, so that more people can get involved and really help. Really offer service to the community. So, anywho, my name is Tiffany Clark, and this is
Kevin Lassiter.
And we are so happy you tuned in. Make sure you
Yes.
tune into episode 8 of the Motor Zone. We'll see you next week.
Love you
Peace.
guys. Peace.